Before we begin, thank you very much to Joseph T for joining my Patreon campaign. Very appreciated. Always like to see you back in the rotation. Thank you everyone who has been supporting me, everyone who has been pitching in. It has been an incredible streak. I almost want to put a counter on the screen of how many days it's been that I've had a shout out. But then I feel like I'm like pressuring people to pitch in just to keep the counter going, and I don't really want to do that. So let's keep it at what it is right now. I like that it's nice and organic, and I like that everyone is just kind of like forcing me to continue to give shout outs. That is entirely your decision. I thank you for making it. It is Here's 10. We haven't done a Here's 10 in a hot minute, so let's get that minute out of the way, right? G1 has interesting stories. So, for modern fans who got into it with Transformers Prime or the newer series like Cyberverse or the live action verse, we've got a brand new live action movie. It's getting a lot of hype here. So this brings in a lot of fans who weren't around for the olden days, back when we actually had to hand draw our Transformer cartoons. And you didn't get to see a lot of the really weird stuff that we had to settle for animation, because the 80s were a wild time for animated stories. So, for your information and edification, today we're going to present 10 of the strangest episodes of Transformers G1. For us longtime fans that have watched the original cartoon back and forth, this list is not going to be all that surprising, and you're going to disagree with a few of my entries because you have your own idea of what makes an episode weird. This is just one humble reviewer's opinion. But for those who weren't around for the original cartoon or haven't gotten around to checking it out yet, this will give you an idea of how bizarre it gets. For you longtime fans, you're probably not surprised that a lot of this comes from season 2. So let us kick this off with number 10, with the bottom of our list, and that is going to be an episode called Hoist Goes Hollywood. This is a very hijinks episode where a Hollywood producer actually talks Hoist into being the star of his new movie, when in reality he just wants the Autobots to play giant monster aliens so they don't have to pay for special effects or suit actors or anything like that. As I said, it's a hijinks episode with a super weird plot to it. Now, compared to what we're going to watch or what we're going to see in later on in this series, in this particular episode, this is pretty tame, right? It's a weird concept because, you're putting a lot of like Hollywood tropes and like behind the scenes stuff in front of the camera with Transformers involved. And why are these universe-saving heroes acting in a movie? I mean, Sunstreaker and Trax being in on this makes total sense. They're full of themselves. But it's also a little bit self-referential to the people who are working on shows like this as well, which makes it just a little bit odder. So like I said, it's a weird episode, but oh my god, it just gets weirder from here. I was going to say it goes down from here, but maybe it goes up, depending on what you're after. Number 9 is strange, not only for its own concept and how the episode works, but also the timing of it, and I'll get to that here in a minute. We're talking about Prime Target, where a old game hunter is so bored bagging animals from around the world, he actually wants to bag Optimus Prime and mount his head on the wall as a trophy. This is a human being. Okay, so first off, poacher. So yes, evil human. However, the idea that a human is so bored, he's actually going to hunt down the protector of the planet, who is the sole reason why their planet hasn't been conquered, because he's bored. And what makes the episode weird is how successful he is at capturing Autobots and even a few Decepticons, more so than Megatron, who is not a small fleshy human whose sole superpower is being super rich. It's a super weird concept. Canonically, it makes no sense. It's just evil human for the sake of being evil. But just the idea of old human with booby-trapped house nearly defeats Optimus Prime it's a little odd. It's also odd because within a month, Thundercats released an episode that was also about a big game hunter going after the biggest hero. It's a trope. It's a trope, but it's just funny to me that it happened twice that short apart. This list is going to hop back and forth between season 2 and season 3. What you need to understand is Transformers was kind of an unexpected hit as far as a cartoon and toy line goes. So when they came to doing season 2, rather than building the universe, well, they built the universe, just they built it oddly. But rather than build on the original concepts of season 1, stealing resources, energy gathering, trying to restore Cybertron, etc., a lot of the plots just became about how Autobots interact with human world, but also how Megatron just tries to deal with the Autobots. And that stretches into season 3 as well, with episodes like Only Human, where you're taking the Autobots' mental stats, their mentality, and you're shoving them into these artificial human bodies. So we spend the whole episode watching 4 characters dressed in identical colors to Transformers, who sound like the Transformers that aren't the Transformers. It's an odd plot made odder by the fact that there's situations that happen. Rodimus appears to sleep with a human girl. Weird. It's implied, which is weird. It's weird. And then things like, Cobra Commander shows up, but for legal reasons, we have to call him Old Snake, even though he's got the same mask and the voice. It's a weird idea. Keep in mind, it's weird also because you're watching a show designed to sell toys, and we have created a plot specifically to remove the toys from the equation. It's also a really rushed episode, too. You can tell they had a lot of ideas for this, and they just didn't get enough time to flesh it all out. Pun not intended. Point is, weird idea for an episode. Kinda. Alright, so, you ready to get into the really weird ones? Cartoons of the 80s and 90s were pretty common in dealing with social issues of the times that they wanted to teach kids were bad. It's usually things like, avoid gangs, don't trust everybody, don't do drugs. That kind of like, it's kind of like informational things that they give to kids in these shows. What they didn't do usually was the perils of gambling. Nor did they depict one of their heroes as a gambler. So, in The Gambler, Smokescreen literally tries to gamble for his Autobot friend's life. Literally, he's cheating at gambling in order to save the Autobots. But he gets wrapped up in the excitement of gambling and goes too far and gets caught. So, hubris as well. It is a strange... it's super strange in that, like, we're dealing with, like, Autobots being used basically as, as collateral for Smokescreen's gambling in this one, but also, not for Smokescreens, for the alien in charge this episode, but it's also weird where, like, the gambling aspect, like, it goes wrong, but it doesn't really seem depicted as, like, a bad thing. In fact, at the end of the episode, Optimus Prime actually, like, takes, like, there's a suggestion that, like, before you go, how about a few games in the casino? And Optimus Prime's like, why not? Because at this point in the story, that you're off Earth and Starscream and his crew are heading back to Earth to inform everyone that, Optimus Prime is off Earth. We should probably take over now. That might be one reason why. But it is strange to see a Autobot that's just can't let go of the slot machine. Even if it is for a good cause, it still just does not seem to fit the tone. Do you remember how weird the medieval stuff was in The Last Night? Well, guess what? Transformers went there more than once. So now we're going to be talking about the normal one. And by normal one, I mean a Decepticon in King Arthur's court. Now, King Arthur, Camelot, fictional. All right, so they don't actually go back to King Arthur and all that. He never shows up in the episode, but they do go back to medieval times, where there is a crisis of, well, there's no energon here, so how do we survive this? But also, they're fighting dragons. It's a medieval fantasy time where dragons were a thing. We get jousting with jets. We get Spike actually being heroic, which is already a weird part of the episode. But anytime you incorporate time travel, you're already like causing a headache. And G1 did time travel more than once. At least 3 times that I can think of right off the top of my head. In this case, we're going to medieval time traveling. So just the idea of robots battling dragons, on paper, awesome. In practice, it's a little bizarre. It is a little bit bizarre. And it just seems very like typical time travel plot for a show that really doesn't need to go into like medieval fantasy elements. I mean, it's one thing to show Autobots out of their comfort zone and out of their typical environment, but I don't know. I think I draw the line at battling dragons. I mean, as much as I am a D&D guy, I think that might be just a little bit too off. Just a little bit. So there is an episode in G1 that deals with Atlantis. Again, it's a season 2 thing where they brought in a lot of other sci-fi tropes in order to fill out episode plots rather than building off of what season 1's plots were, just because they had a lot of episodes to fill. They had a huge 52 episode run in season 2 to cover. So of course you're going to be dealing with pretty typical plots that you would see in 80s cartoons, like nothing really shocking or out there. Stuff that pretty much all the shows did. They did an Atlantis episode, but we're going to talk about the weirder Atlantis episode called Sea Change. Sea Change is Space Atlantis, essentially. You get another group of aquatic people who can actually transform into like half-fish mermaid types. But the weird part is that this is a love story episode between said mergirl and Sea Spray. So I'm sorry. There's some people who can't accept the couplings that they did in IDW, but are perfectly fine with this coupling. Like, okay, all right, fine, whatever. You do you. It is a bizarre one. Now, it's not the only time a mini-bot Autobot and a humanoid actually had a love story in Transformers. But not only is this one more genuine feeling and like very much more mutual throughout the entire episode, it's also an even further departure between Transformer and human. And just the idea that we're doing the Atlantis aquatic people thing again, but we're just going one step further with it and making it Space Atlantis, essentially. I did like season 2 adding so many other planets to the universe, but this one just feels like they recycled the plot and made it even weirder than it was before. But yeah, love who you want to love. That's the lesson here. We need to go medieval again, and this time we need to make it even more bizarre and strange. We need to talk about Nightmare Planet. So by medieval, this one actually isn't time traveling. Instead, the Quintessons have invented a device that taps into Daniel's nightmares in order to project things into Cybertron. So you've got a lot of medieval imagery, Transformers fighting dragons once again, Springer and Razorclaw having to team up, which is also a little bit strange. It's, again, I mean, it's as bizarre of an episode as it sounds, just in the concept. You also have to wonder if the Quintessons can invent a device that just makes these mental projections real enough to battle and potentially defeat the Transformers, Autobot and Decepticon alike. Why does it have to be Daniel? Why does it have to be a human kid's brain? Why can you not make it just like any imagination? Why does it have to be when they're dreaming? Why can't you make it one of the Transformers' enemies so all of the imaginings are much more dangerous and they don't have the potential to turn against you, which is what happens here. again, like this one's bizarre in the plot holes it provides, and it makes the you like go wait. What about this and this and that? What about this and that and that? Plot holes abound in this one, but it's 80s cartoon. What can you expect? Just more bizarre is again just the overall setting. We are doing medieval again, but it is all imagination projected into reality medieval. And I'm sorry, I think if Daniel, this is also going into his other nightmares, which involve like giant Galvatrons. So you also have that mixed in with your sword and sorcery elements. As I said, it's a repeated plot. It's a repetitious plot, but it is also one step beyond what the previous one was, just as far as like super weird and out there. If you know G1 cartoons, then you probably know what the top 3 are. It's just a matter of what order they come in. So my number 3 is going to be Child's Play. Now, on paper, this is actually interesting for a few reasons, specifically because it actually is a clever way of making the Transformers in the episode the same size as the toys that would be played with. They actually look like they're being played with as toys. What's weird about the episode is it's an alien world where everyone is so big the Transformers are actually super tiny now. And it all takes place inside a kid's bedroom. So it's almost got a weird like pre-Toy Story vibe to it. But it's also weird that the alien civilization seems to work and even look in some facets exactly like how Earth would look. Like it just straight up looks like a kid's bedroom. He's got a typical telescope and curtains, and he's got a cat. An alien cat, to be sure, but he's got a cat. The whole episode is surreal because everything is just so unfitting for Transformers and what previous seasons were, what future seasons would be. Out of context, it's a super funny episode to show somebody. It also brings into weird continuity aspects, like if the Autobots only have Omega Supreme for interplanetary transport, why can Perceptor just throw some parts into a kid's rocket toy and make it back to Earth with that? Okay, I mean, fine, I guess the child just has an interplanetary spaceship as a toy. All we really have to do is tighten some bolts, and apparently that works. The episode's also the home to some of like the worst animation errors. Watch the end of the episode, and it's a nightmare of like misarranged layering. But that is beside the point. The point is, the concept for the episode is almost clever in a way, but it is a super weird episode compared to all the others. We're going to be remaining in Season 3 for the rest of this countdown, which should come as no surprise if you know Season 3. And we're probably going to be very obvious in what number 1 is going to be once I tell you that my number 2 is Webworld. So, Galvatron's crazy, right? Like, he's still getting buzzings in his head. He's abusing his own minions. Like, he's just throwing he's just like, he's chaos. He's chaotic and horribly violent. So, Cyclonus and Scourge, like, out of concern for their leader or the Decepticon cause or whatever, decide Galvatron needs therapy. We need to put Galvatron into therapy. They go to the best therapy planet in the universe, and they actually try to mentally heal Galvatron, which is not something you do, and it's not going to work, but they try it anyway, right? So, needless to say, Galvatron is so insane, he actually manages to drive the planet insane. The entire planet is actually like the source of all this like therapy. Because it's gonna like basically wipe out who he is, essentially. What's funny about this episode, I mean, aside from the idea of like just like look at the image, it's yeah, Galvatron needs help whether he likes it or not. And you know what? There's a lot of people who need therapy, but I don't think it should be forced on you. even if you are the bad guy. But it is weird that, like, of all the characters, all the heroes, and everything that's been going on in this whole show, it's the Decepticons who decide that therapy is a good idea, and some people just need help to keep their brain in check. Yeah, yeah. Galvatron's insane, and so is the writer who made this. If you know me, you know there's only one answer. You know there's only one episode that can be number one. That episode is, of course, going to be Carnage in C minor. I have talked about this episode more than once. It was the focus of an entire TJTV review because it is amongst the strangest animation episodes I have ever seen. The whole premise is they find a planet that is entirely based around musical harmonies, and there is a weapon on the planet that is literally just sound. So if Soundwave can copy it and play it, it becomes devastating. And okay, so this is based on the idea of like certain sound vibrations can cause certain effects, whether that is breaking a crystal glass or the brown note. You know, either way, either or. But in this case, it is just a devastating, like, vibration weapon, for lack of a better term. What makes the episode bizarre is the design choices, where the entire world just looks like utter chaos when it's supposed to be based on harmonies. And you've got a cast of characters who are all singing, and they are singing very badly. All, you know, to try, you know, they're not singing. They're speaking all of their lines, which is not better. It's not better at all. Yeah, it sounds weird. It looks weird. The idea that no one, like, even though they're speaking English, the home audience can understand. The Autobots and Decepticons don't understand what they're speaking without a translator. The whole thing is just such a weird plot for Transformers. Like, the idea of like a world based on musical harmony is fine. The depiction is where it goes wrong. The portrayal is where it goes wrong. The writing is where it goes wrong. Good concept, but incredibly surreal episode to watch, especially when you count this is probably the most animation error-filled episode in the entire series. It's a debate whether this or Bot is the worst episode. I feel this is worse than Bot, but Bot has a plot that makes sense. It is poorly written and features characters who are wholly unlikable, but the plot makes sense. This plot is a mess. And there you go. So, obviously, Transformers was very typical 80s cartoon in how weird things got. So maybe this stuff isn't all that weird. But there are such standouts when you talk about bizarre G1 episodes that I feel like it's worth mentioning, like the span of like, okay, that's kind of odd. That seems odd for a robot cartoon. To why? So I think it's important to see the span of that. So thank you for watching the span of that. I hope everyone enjoyed. I want to do more Here's 10s, and if people like this one, something in my head tells me that we could do that through, like, you know, the rest of the weirdest episodes in Transformers fiction animation, period, and not just restricted to G1. So if you want it, hit like, hit subscribe, let me know in the comments below, and I will see you next time.